bam lai ji je gam bo ba de zai je zai gan ji karma ba je je jang je ju ban zi nam da 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 za ra pa ra di do pa so sa la sa ja je la nga ni be ya me ro go da bo ga ju la so ro wa de so ga ju la ma na yu ban ze no nam da ra sin ji la xian lo gong je gang ba ra song ba yi se na ra ga la cha yi me ba ta sen de du da ju be gom ji la yin ga ra ge ba me ba ra sin ji la me ga gom je go ra song ba yi me nga de go je be la ma la yin de so wa de be gom ji la yin me me ge je wa ra sin ji la yin me gom je ngue je song ba yi kan ya ra do be ngo wo so ma de ma je de ga ra jong be gom ji la gong za lo dan ra wa ra sin ji la nam do ngo wo ji ge song ba yi je ya ma ye je ya wa la man ga ro ba ra jar ve gom ji la ran de yer me do ba ra sin ji la je wa ga de yan da la ma da ga ra me je je ba la lo ju je sa da lam je yun de ra zo ne lo ra je jang ge gong ba nye do yo
Roso ye la gong ye pa de re wa rik be do je sham lang ge chan sa ra pan den sa ve lama Rinpoche da ge je wo de pen de den yon ka tin chen bo go ne je zong de ko song so je ngo do sa do song to some sanje lama la muguta bu so ande la dan sem rango he zong de de
Bata chido.
haren ton sa
Lare.
oh la son de sam do
Nyunyo.
oh la ton ton sa ton da sa da rik hing bo jin 等你将来老一年女， Pang Tondo Sando Maki Rangarjon took Mogishan Lam Jitos Tanya go do jindos, that tang sartan, Rick Himbo jeans, that Ranging Tomba Yimba, number Salwa Yimba. Tenikora Rick Himbo jeans and the Jetta, Tom Yendo Sabe, Rangi, Tendela Rick Himbo jeans, someone that Karina Hako, Tanya, Sabo, Higmando. Denye Jonle Loy Yanur Bang State Tabu Chingana, Don Yendo Saber Rangitan, Sargento Don Big Rangi, or Rick Himbo Jeans and a tat, Nom Tog, Log, my job, Goni, Takona, it's a he something that would you sonda. Takona Mosin, something that would you like Himbo Jean. Denye Jonle. Tenye Jonle Loy Yanur Bang set the ga some chicken on la. Then the same Nelo Jon Samle, Tem Main Bajigatin, tell a Jeto la Sopege, Log Yanur la Sobatini, Yon Sobatam Jete, Bango days, Tondo, Sando, Maji Rangar Jones, Tache Gum Tat Kona. Ranking Tassal something on the Japanda or Tele Tando and Chepa the public Tongan Ton Dupige Tenet Lotan Tele Chepa the public Nelu Savagangi Ton Dupic Loteta of Magene Rangar Jones took Mogu Shano Lamjato statue number Condola Carcheho the Cardi Sena Teni Lama la Mugu Guani Ta Yani Yang the Soan Depa, Ta Delape Carchen Bosigi Yori, Jetange Ta Chusin Kente, Ta Lo Chusin Roa Sinkente, Ta Carchembo Davori, Ngone Taneg Jake, Yam Mena Jake, Tangaranson Koala Ne Savage Capsula. Tache Kangen Dabo, Duhan Dabo, Tende, Show Chamboji Chong Gam Dabo Chinaya, Rancho Gichula, Long Havanda Yungri, or Yaman Jebu Tambatende, Jalvik Capsula, Tepa Mugugi, Nishuka Tam Dabo Jilla Tene, Chula Pena, Kupige Tam Dabo Yungri, Junet Tendela Tene, Lo Chula Nova Dabo. Le Havo that young took it. That you lam doya to Shida, Carchen body, Monetanek and Jambo, Condro Kepena, Lama Jambo Ganala Yenaya, Tenekora, Geza, Yayan, two Yayan chicks in the Sungado, gave us thousand against that Yayan, Tuna Yayan chain, that and they chain, choosing against the Mo Tune. Pan Machi Pala Jontobat, Shendon Naja, Tene Jake, Kale Capone Yori Yaman and the Pay, Masipagi Jake, Onetanegi, Gawa the Tobic number, Hajangi Chembig Gone Jake, Tenu Kana, Kansam Dawajilla, Pan Machi Bazo Tobandawa. Tene Kale, Kale Doran Donnet May, Yendo Yagin Yigin, Dohandawa. Yaman and Slopjon Pay, Masipa Zuni. Tepat the Mugu Lam Chepat and Papa Mepala Tene, telling on it and Nyon, $30, Jem Matopandavo. Te Machewala Tene, Tessam Tang, Nomdo Mambo Chigan, Lom de la Shone, Takale, Kora, Gyamtso Wandava, that's in the Hida Yungudi. Teta Mew Tapsula, Teni, Lama la Yan Yan to Mugu. Lamik Gosong Togi, Canap some jete, Rangi, Lunga, ye some lan jone, Tenekora, Tene Lama Tota, Rangi Sem, Ye me Pandawo, Tene Yontova Sho, Yambek, Mugu, Sondip Goni, Ayan the Andola Teta of Chayata, Tene, K Checo Chick, that Teta, K Checo Chick, Ta tanda pengan jamba samba tena songa de henlo kom jing go so ma jing song yo ba de te yin de ko la sori yendo la hemba malo ba yin na tena ya gom so yendo le je to be ge ko la nisho da bo se yung yo ma de te yin de ko so la ko la henlo se wa te la ya ga de ke samlo tang kap so le je ko wan de pe ma se pe ge du jang da bo ma se pa so kwan da bo ji tende gen ko be gen lo de song yo ma de sin de gen na ko wa la gen lo sen gen te ko wa sen gen te la cham ba yin na ta ran yin ro sam so yin na ya yon se do ba te la tene dong ha ge ran yin ta to be ge ran yin ta ma ta be ran yin je yang du sha wa ma to je ge tato tendo dewa tamba te mepa la tene tandoa ri token ne lo ri token ne kala chamba yena ya tene tela koda nyingbo mewa ta meta per hangin ta jorbe ke hangin ta meten per hangin da bo ke soso ke ngone ka ha kone te ta bo tela ta ngone tane ke tu nam de yang rang yena ya rong yin roa ri to ke semjin sa yena ya rong te tene pa me pa la chama roa ho sambe ke tene kora tan kan se ro ko te ta bu ke henlo te tene so yin do la che to ba yena tene henlo lam je to sta te ta so yin do che to ba yena lam chepadum papa la kone kondon dor chebe ke ton chot cheba teta vre sen sonare de la nenten do da tonyin do o ta teta bu gone lama la muta a helon tenye bot montene so so go sammo che ya po je tan thapa yina tene nenten yang ne yang do la ta kwam go yo de chetang ge kwam ne flower minjur be ngo te nga ya yo mai sen so wa de ma gom ba yin na tene hen lo sambo wanda bo ta mugu sambo wanda bo che wa yin na te ke sa da ring bo lan do yo ma de te yin do ka sala mugu la yin na ya mugu one thane ko ra phan me pa tha me ban da wo ta hen lo ta bo che yin na ya hen lo te tu jon do la sem la Terchen Barway Dorje go ne ta kona pa ma che panda bo che la yong to panda bo che chong wa yin na tene Terchen mon do to de o jen Gyamtso to la te dar hyo ta o jen Gyamtso singe kon de shalap che ge hyo anda ta chalang ge sem na te ta de hyo Zimbabwe doje yuta ne su ti son do
The next song, which is on page 90. The next song, which is on page 91, begins with the first line, "Empty and clear, its nature awareness." So for convenience, we've given it the title, "Empty and Clear, Its Nature Awareness." It's really one of the shortest of all the songs. It's one of the shortest songs in the collection, although there are many other similar short pieces of advice on meditation practice written in response to the requests of specific individuals. The first two lines of the song go together as they describe the principal means of meditation. What, for example, in our lineage supplication is called the body of meditation, or the main thing in meditation. And here it says, "Empty and clear, its nature awareness, just cultivate that, give up intellectualization." Empty and clear its nature awareness, the first line, describes the attributes of the mind. The mind's nature, it is said, is emptiness, and its character is lucidity or clarity. So when we analyze the mind or think about the mind, we think about these two aspects. Its nature, emptiness, which is also the nature of everything, and then its defining attribute or character, which is cognitive lucidity or clarity. But these two things, Rinpoche mentioned, are not really two different things. When we think about them, they sound like two different things. And when we refer to them, we can refer to them in isolation of one another. But while these things are isolates, they are not two different things in substance or reality. So therefore it says, its nature, awareness. The nature of the mind, fundamentally, its essence. The word here in the Tibetan is nyingpo, which means the kernel or essential essence of something, is awareness. That's what the mind is. And here, awareness is being used in the same sense in which the fresh mind of present awareness and so forth was used this morning. The second line follows on the first and explains what to do and what not to do. So the first line describes the mind, empty and clear, its nature, awareness, and the second line tells us how to work with that. First part is just cultivate that. Just cultivate that means allow your mind to remain in a state of simple awareness. And the second part of the line says, give up intellectualization. Intellectualization means thinking, oh, the mind is empty, or the mind is lucid, or this is awareness, or what is this awareness like, and so on. So how do you cultivate it without intellectualization? Rinpoche said, through mere recognition. You don't alter anything in or anything about your mind, except that you put in just enough effort so that there is a continuity or sustained recognition. That is, the mind remains aware of itself. And aside from maintaining that bare or mere recognition, you make no effort to change anything or add to anything or get rid of anything. Therefore, in the third line, he says, don't desire insight or clarity. Now, we saw this morning that there is, in a sense, a potential contradiction between why we are meditating and how we meditate. We are meditating because we want to achieve insight. On the other hand, we're told that while meditating, we shouldn't desire insight or clarity. What this means here, Rinpoche said, is simply that although, of course, we are meditating in order to achieve Buddhahood and bring others to Buddhahood, while meditating, we should not give in to the tendency to look for something better. When our mind is resting in ordinariness, which is to say it's not distracted, but it's just merely aware of itself, there may be a tendency to hope for something more fantastic, more spectacular. And that is a problem, because then we're ignoring what needs to be cultivated and pursuing something that doesn't exist. So therefore it says, don't desire insight or clarity, cultivate what's natural. Natural, the mind's natural awareness. Your mind has the native natural ability to be aware of itself. It's something that minds can do. So that natural ability is the faculty which you're using in order to allow your mind to see its own nature. So those 3 lines describe what, to use the lineage supplication as a reference, we call the body, or a main thing in meditation. And then the 4th line describes how we create the necessary environment for that to progress. Because undistracted awareness has to be practiced in a certain context. And that context consists of what the lineage supplication calls the feet and head of meditation. Here, Terchen Barway Dorje says, devotion and disgust are always friends of the path. Friends in this case means things that really help. Now, the need for devotion and disgust is a twofold. There needs to be the initial inspiration that causes our minds to go to the Dharma. But beyond that, of greater long-term importance, is what allows our Dharma to become a path. In other words, what enables us to not merely become interested in Dharma, but to continue with its practice. Usually, one of two things, or both of them in combination, will cause someone's mind to turn to Dharma. Sometimes when people suffer intensely and they look for an answer to their suffering, they want to understand their suffering and what causes it and prevent it from happening again or from lasting, they turn to Dharma for answers. And that's an instance of suffering becoming inspiration. At other times, sometimes someone will meet a very impressive spiritual teacher and feel inspired by them. And that will cause their mind to turn to Dharma. The problem arises, however, that if these inspirations are produced by circumstances, in other words, are not independent of circumstances, then the inspiration will wear out. For example, if we are inspired to practice Dharma or to study Dharma because of suffering, then we may lose that inspiration once we start to feel better. We may forget how bad our pain was. It's hard for the mind to retain in memory the intensity of the suffering we experience. In the same way, if our minds turn to the Dharma because we're inspired by meeting an impressive spiritual teacher, when the inspiration that we derive from their presence becomes a mere memory, the intensity of what we saw in them will diminish. We won't remember very vividly how great we felt they were. And so after a time, then the inspiration will go. So it's relatively easy for our minds to turn to Dharma because invariably we experience moments of inspiration and moments of agony. But it's very, very hard for us to stick to it, which is Dharma becoming a path. And Jomgalo Drtai brought this up in his liturgy calling the gurus from afar when he said, I repeatedly set about engaging in virtue, but I just as repeatedly stop. And this is how we are. You know, something goes wrong or we feel inspired and we start practicing, and then for one reason or another, we stop. What is happening is that in the case where our minds turn to the Dharma because of the inspiration of an impressive spiritual teacher, and then subsequently that inspiration decreases or vanishes entirely, what is happening is simply that our devotion, the affect of being inspired, was very shallow. It didn't penetrate deeply enough into us to become independent of circumstances. And similarly, when we lose our inspiration because we feel better, we're not as miserable, we don't feel we need Dharma as critically as we did before, the problem is that we are not disgusted enough with samsara. Now, disgust here, the word shenlo, disgust, really does mean almost a nausea. But it's not, Rinpoche said, what some people think, where it's an attitude of prudery. It's not the prudish thought samsara is filthy and dirty. It's not a snooty attitude or prudish attitude. It's simply that you have recognized that it's just never going to work out. So disgust here really means the wisdom of knowing that samsara is just never going to be worth it. The wisdom of knowing that if you keep on doing the samsaric thing, ignorance, you're going to keep on getting the same result. And that's what disgust is, because you no longer have gusto, you no longer have enthusiasm for investment in samsara, because you don't believe in it. So you could think of it as disillusionment. And it means that you recognize that there's never going to come a time where samsara is going to be okay. And that disgust gives you a desire to free yourself and others from samsara. If you're really disgusted with samsara and you understand that it's never going to be okay, to the degree that you are that disgusted, you will desire never to experience it yourself, and you will desire that nobody else ever have to experience it themselves ever again with the same intensity that a thirsty person desires water or a starving person desires food. If you recognize that it's never going to be okay, that's where that desire comes from. So that disgust, rather than being a kind of snooty, prudish, standoffish attitude, is actually the opposite. It's both a desire for freedom and compassion. And that's why those things are the feet of meditation. The desire for your own freedom and that of others. And that's what it means that disgust is the foot or feet of meditation. When you have this kind of recognition that samsara is just always going to be the same thing, it's going to be the repeated experience of suffering, of impermanence, of change, of instability, that you can't depend upon samsara. You can't rely upon it. It's unreliable. It's untrustworthy. Then that desire for freedom and devotion for your teacher, real devotion, where you want your teacher's body, speech, and mind to dissolve into you, where you really want to be like them in every way, those two things will befriend your path. They will lead your path in the right direction. So in the next line, Terchen Barway Dorje says, apply this and you'll accomplish something great. What is this? The points that he's just taught. Undistracted, unaltered awareness, self-awareness, disgust, and devotion. But the key word here is apply. We have to apply ourselves to these things. It's said that there is nothing that will not become easy through familiarization. But we have to make the effort. We have to actually apply ourselves. And that is what leads to the Dharma becoming a path. When you apply yourself to the cultivation of an understanding of what samsara is, when you apply yourself to the cultivation of devotion, then these things will become deep and not shallow, and you'll become independent. They will become independent of circumstances. And then it ends with Gyamtso. Keep this in your mind. It was written evidently for a disciple named Gyamtso. Barway Dorje wrote this in Yudrak. And that's it.
Some sangye lama la mugutabo soan. Ransen rango hensam de redo yopen kanson. Redo yop. Take a back on
Redo,
Never.
Mika.
La.
Lama la de sare. Narangela. Ngala de redo down, rejo meparo. Dona de redo down, penetrant rejo meparo. Oh, mama, rejo mare. Alter de redo down. Dona de chile meparo. Chile inside. Redo chile meparo.
Tusum sangye lama la mugutabo soan de state kona lama soan de bache. Ransen rango hesam de te reto mapping takarin tanda song de yabo hakomanda. Macho netan yuala. Come don't come mapper concerto. Yuan yamne himboy. Macho netan yuala ta macho pa ne you got it, take a sebo song and take it up. Netan yuala. Donka mapper concertos. John and yamne himboy. Lama Sunday Simkin la. Ninja Pantham Jundu Jas. Lama la soan de pati gogu yoris. Lama la soan de pati karechen gogu yoris. Ta tanji kondo hubata duri. Lame kosong togi chilapte. Ta dana jopar chepala. Sondep de gogu yorela. Sondep de ranke tepata mugu teten chege go ne zuba yina. Tene chenambia set the debache tenden juku yoris. Lama tela ta sanje ngogen do hechi rangi yagwa yina. Sanje ngoge chenapti jacha jasa ma juku yoris. The karere senna ta lama te kora tok sanje ke rangi di yore. Tusong ke sanje tamje ke tok da ye mepa jire di yore. Tela tene ranga sowa manchu pachi tapa yina ta tu sumga sanje tamje ki tukjo ki chalav kaan yoba te tamje te lama ki june rana penan jok toku yore te yindo te jacha jatamba chin joku yore mato cheke jok sa manjuk radawa maris ta so kaana raa legri sena tepa ta mugu tela raa legri rapti yoba yina jacha jan yogari drinking yoba yina dringbochin yogari tamachi yoba yina tamachin yogari tepa mena kanyan yogumare kare de sena pena ta sanje chomden de ngone thane kita ngaranso sangma ke ha gogo kare tene ta sen sambo sumju sanyi peje sambo jejo da demba Dorje ke ko one tane ta thari ke ngana su suram dela deba chungni ke so ten pep deba ke sanje ngosala mazu pepa che rete galon lepe kama ke deba sawani na mahyo pare mahyo sadu chanap sawani na mahyo pare ta te tab che yembe ke jonsen la ten kase ndabo chi soso la tam top te soso la ra lege de madom nge teba jacha jasamba lama de le cheba yina lame tega samjira so te unjo yo na sam gwanda o tele tan yo mari te yendo ka bala te ni lama la sonde java tang te ni sonde java samge pengi yo mari pena ta sanje thamche te ni ngone tane semjen gojam ma to pa java je sabji me se ngara se yo tende chen song yo re te yendo kapsula semjen goja tela kare sena ta semjen hinji je yo re nongkan ta ta nyombe semjen thamje te pamal machu bache kyan yo ma re te ta pamal jobe ke semjen thamje te tene sosu ge pangja kora jo mege wala tene devo dunga nyong da hako yo ma re tene jo gewala tene devo dewa nyong da ha mogo wala tene tene dang kona doju sama ke gewan de pa ina ya dewan de pa ina ya jo mege wa sa ba tele tene tene mendo yenda dunga nyong da wo te ta wo yung yo re te ta bu phama semje samje la hingje samme ke semje la hingje go ne ta te thamje la pembe tap kande ji so so ge lunga yi som ge so ne sa to ba yin so go sambe ge ta te ta bu ge pembe ge semde tu jondo cha ju te ta te ni den de ge na so so no wa cha go ge de tene ge so ndo ba tan la hu ta te ta bo tene pena lama la sonde da semje la hingje ge tho ni tene sosu ke samlo tandanda botela tenda bozo watanda mazepe ta teta bu goni gebe ke so kade je sa yo ba yina luge goni chansa wata tene kona koda jabala so be luge kona gewata ngage goni tene ta sonde manam la so ba karen damba yina ya tek gewata yege goni ta kona ta tanda konde hubata do la lama la sonde da semje la hinje la so ba jene tene samba kare geve samba kanyo ba ti yon so ba tamje ti so sena mangbo chi la so mu yo de ta te ta ba koran de mang ta tu sam da kare so so ge cheba ta cheba jowa ta cheba la so ba kare yo ba yin ya te thamje te tando simje thamje tato lana meba zobu sanje ke koma tabar jabe chedo ngo sambe ke ngo kora seda demba ta chego gare teke tedin
Sega.
teke ngor babu doji pewa ke ta te tabu te ba demba Sega singing a shallow you are in what? Second one lumber doji pewing so much. In the market in the
They checked
they
it.
check
Then you put the Delachang Dopa, the 6G,
the Palabian, all of
then
them.
the 6G, they pass
Right,
So the next song on page 92 is a very long one. It has almost 10 lines. And again, it's concerned with the practice of meditation and the putting that practice in the necessary environment or context. The couplet with which the song begins, the couplet of invocation, says, "My Guru, all Buddhas of the 3 times, I pray to you with fierce devotion." Now, the fact that Terchen Barway Dorje specifies fierce devotion here tells us that he's emphasizing how to gain realization primarily through devotion. However, he's going to go on in the next 4 lines. He talks principally about the practice of meditation itself, and then returns briefly to the topic of devotion. He says, now the funny thing, if you're following in the Tibetan, the order of the lines is very different, because in the Tibetan, the third line, this mere recognition by your mind of itself, which is the real topic of these 4 lines, comes first. The whole 4 lines is cultivating without hope, fear, or alteration, and without choosing between stillness and movement, this mere recognition by your mind of itself, amidst whatever arises, is the essence of cultivation. So, to start with, what he's saying here, the statement is, this mere recognition by your mind of itself, amidst whatever arises, is the essence of cultivation. So his principal topic in these 4 lines on meditation is the mere recognition, what Rinpoche described earlier as mere recognition, the mere recognition by your mind of itself, amidst whatever arises, is the essence of cultivation. So that means, first of all, it's mere recognition, aside from allowing your mind to recognize itself, its own nature. No other effort is required. So it's mere recognition or bare recognition. But doing that amidst whatever arises, so regardless of what thoughts arise, that is the essence of cultivation. Now, if we add in what in the English become the first 2 lines, he says, cultivating that without certain things. So if you understand that's what is being cultivated, there are certain things to avoid. Hope, fear, or alteration. Hope means, again, hoping for something special, something better than simply the mind simply being aware of itself as it is in the present. Fear means, especially the fear that this mere recognition might not be enough, might not be the true path. And alteration means trying to improve upon the mind or state of mind, trying to introduce some kind of special state, or trying to get rid of certain thoughts and cultivate others. And without choosing between stillness and movement. Stillness and movement are 2 easily observable common states of mind. Stillness is when you're not thinking. Movement is when there is the movement of thoughts, when there are thoughts in your mind. So stillness and movement really refer to not thinking and thinking. And you can be aware of both of these. You can be aware of stillness and aware of movement. But awareness of stillness and movement is not the mind being aware of itself. It is mere awareness of states of mind. So, in the context of cultivating the mind's ability to be aware of itself, stillness and movement are irrelevant. For beginners, stillness is cultivated so that we gain some freedom of or control over mind. But in the practice of meditation, finally, there is nothing better about stillness and nothing worse about movement. So it's important at some point to stop choosing, to have no preference between stillness and movement. So if we put all of that together, the advice that forms the central part of the song is, cultivating without hope, fear, or alteration, and without choosing between stillness and movement, this mere recognition by your mind of itself amidst whatever arises is the essence of cultivation. Now, so again, this is the same point as in the last song. It's a description of what in our lineage supplication is called the body of meditation. Now here, the head of meditation, devotion, and the feet of meditation discussed are explained using different words. First, he says, always pray to your guru. Now, always indicates how important this is. He doesn't say, sometimes pray to your guru, or occasionally pray to your guru, or when you feel like it, pray to your guru. He says, always pray to your guru. So therefore, actual prayer to the guru makes up a lot of our practice, our formal practice, and makes up a huge amount of the emotional content of our practice. Well, why is it so important? We've seen that this is a path of devotion, which means that it is only through sufficient devotion that the blessings of the body, speech, and mind of our guru will actually enter us, which means that we become like, more and more like the guru in their qualities. But that devotion comes from prayer. It comes from the effort of prayer. So praying to the guru is the principal means of actually gaining progress. But prayer depends upon our attitude, or what we actually believe, and especially what we believe about the guru. Now, the guru's mind, since the guru is somebody who has, if they are qualified to be a guru, somebody who has recognized the nature of their mind, and that recognition defines awakening or Buddhahood. The guru's mind is Buddha. There are no two ways about it. If the guru is fit to be a guru, his or her mind is Buddha. We have to know that. If you know that your guru's mind is Buddha, then when you pray to your guru, you will receive a Buddha's blessing. It's 100% certain. It's 100% certain because it's not voluntary on the part of the guru. Ironically, you could say it has almost nothing to do with the guru. There's no possibility that you could have complete certainty that your guru's mind is the Buddha, and pray to them and not receive the blessing of the Buddha. The guru can't say, oh, I don't want to give this person my blessing. It doesn't work that way. It's automatic, it's natural, and therefore it's certain. What is uncertain is what we believe and how we feel. If we have tremendous faith, the faith which knows that the guru's mind is the Buddha, and the resultant or corresponding amount of devotion, then we will receive the blessing of a Buddha. And if we have middling faith, and therefore middling devotion, we'll receive middling blessings. If we have a little bit of faith, a little bit of devotion, so we think that the guru is, well, I don't know what they are, but they're at least a little bit better than I am, then we'll receive the blessing of someone who is a little bit better than we are. And if we have zero faith and devotion, we'll receive zero blessing. And this has happened. For example, during the Buddha's lifetime, The Buddha was, to say the least, an impressive spiritual teacher. Physically, he had the 32 marks and 80 signs of Buddhahood on his body. His life history was that of the 12 deeds of a Supreme Nirmanakaya. He was a living, walking Vajra body. But people's perception of him varied. And his first attendant, the attendant for much of his early ministry, was a monk called Lucky Star, who wasn't a very lucky, it's not a very lucky name. Lucky Star wasn't so lucky. Because he said to the Buddha, he said, "You're not so great." He said, "Whatever you've got, well, I don't have that 6-foot halo." He said, "I don't have that 6-foot halo that you walk around with. But everything else, I got what you got. And I know what you've said better than you do." And he stormed off and was reborn as a preta and so on. So it's quite possible to develop, to have no faith in even the greatest spiritual teacher. So it really depends upon us. So that's what is meant by always pray to your guru. And we've seen that that's essential, but is praying to the guru with belief that they are the Buddha enough just by itself? No. Something else is also necessary. And that is the right motivation. It's often said that the only way to please Buddhas is by pleasing sentient beings. Buddhas don't want anything. All they want is for beings to get what they want. And so what Buddhas want is for us to get what we want. Well, what do we want? We want to be happy. Why aren't we? Because we don't know how to be happy. All the things that we think will make us happy, almost without exception, make us miserable. And yet we chase after them. And all the things that would make us happy, we think will make us miserable. So we run away from them as fast as we can. So what Buddhas want is for us to stop doing what's not going to make us happy and start doing what's going to make us happy. So in other words, what Buddhas have instead of desire or wanting is compassion. So therefore, in order to properly receive your Guru's blessings, your motivation for wanting to do so has to be compassion. Therefore, in the next line it says, "Always pray to your Guru and have compassionate benevolence for beings." So devotion and devoted prayer to the Guru and compassionate benevolence for beings are the necessary companions to meditation. And finally, dedicate all virtues to beings' benefit. Significantly here, Rinpoche said, Terchen Barway Dorje says all virtues. He doesn't mean dedicate the virtue of your meditation alone, but every possible thing you do that's good. Physical virtues like prostrations and circumambulation and helping people. Verbal virtues like mantras and liturgy and being nice to people with your speech. Mental virtues like devotion and meditation and compassion. All of this, everything that you do that is good, needs to be dedicated to the well-being of others. And then it ends, "This was written for the faithful Tsega," evidently the name of one of Terchen Barway Dorje's disciples, by Barway Dorje virtue.
Ta teki jesu la sikye yeshe indo tandela pa sikye ndela yena samno tana me mambo chikla samhanda wachindo che nam rangsem sama yingme je chuk lama Jella Soato, Sacharanam, said the Mambo Jella Somewhere. Some Somaseta and you couldn't show the Atondore, and you mentioned the Washogoyamdo. Or Teta will get something on a Yuame Pala, Jones, Tukun, Lama Jella Soato, Sangha Jabo Medanguru, starting ngag goni ta sangha gi jabo sena sangha thamje ke nan so ta bo tene bedang guru bo che ge sangha bedang guru te song ge de manor sanjen do parnge ta kewa ta dipa manor ba che lunga ye samje gewa dewan jong ki jo khaim la gewa samje dub jo tang Megavakare, Yambate, Tamjete, Pamala, Sopamanawa, Zebayina, then Kona Jaja Jatamba, Sanjan Topala, Niebare, so on those, Samba Dorje, so still the Lachayana.
So we'll conclude with the new songs for today with the one on page 93, which is 5 lines long, with a 6th that's just basically the signature. Unlike the songs that we've looked at so far today, this one was not written for one specific person. It was evidently written for a group, possibly a large group of disciples, because it begins, all of you. And so the first line is instruction on meditation, and essentially it summarizes what was contained in the previous 2 songs. All of you, cultivate your mind's freshness without distraction. Your mind's freshness refers to what was described in the song we saw this morning as the fresh mind, that state of awareness of the present moment. And cultivating that without distraction, without straying from that, is the principal instruction. And then he continues with 3 other instructions that will facilitate that. First is, always pray to your Lord Guru. So that's the same as in the previous song, which says, always pray to the Guru. Second, recite the king of secret mantras, the Vajraguru. King of secret mantras means the principal or greatest of all secret mantras, and that is here the 12-syllable mantra of Guru Rinpoche. And then finally, don't mix up right and wrong. Don't do things that are wrong based on the mistaken idea that they're right, and don't neglect things that are right under the mistaken idea that they're wrong. So in other words, do the right thing. And then what will all of this lead to? Cultivating the mind's freshness, praying to the Guru, reciting the Vajraguru mantra, and paying attention to behavior. You'll definitely accomplish Buddhahood. Definitely means certainly, without a doubt. If you do these things, you will achieve Buddhahood. And then it concludes, written by Barway Dorje. So we have an hour for questions. I'm the order. To a minute? Oh, there you are.
Over here? Yeah.
Hello. Thank you so much, Rinpoche. I have a very confused mind. And I got a little confused when I think I heard something about we should we need to feel disgust for samsara. On the other hand, before that, I think I heard that samsara and nirvana are the same.
Mm-hmm.
So, are you saying when you say to feel disgust for samsara, to feel disgust for your kleshas and things like that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. The number chick na kowa la shempa lo go do so. Yang de ngondo yang korwa da yang de chick pare song song. De na kowa la shempa lo ju de so so rangi nyomong ma se gi ore pe kandare.
Sende nyung ta tini be chapa chambo le konde yeme tokpa singe tanji kone se ya tenda wo jin na tene ngone ke ta chepa phak pe sala phebe ki jewo tamba namla yena tene khowa sene dubu ke tanji meba tang nyangye ne deba sene los chupa chi mepa konde nying ne lo te konanta kona ye mepa to tobe ke toge kansra ta yonten da bote chepa de papa de yoware ngara sola ina tanda nyinde ke wando sonala tenne do henda bo kare yore sena nyangelen de base de pe chepa de papa yonten da dembe ke sanda bo che tawya yobe ke do hetan kowa se de kausala pe mase be dongar chembe rangi ji yobe ke do henda bo ta ndam da bo nyin do gas te yopa la ten tene kora tendengana so ke dongar nyong yores te yendo kausala ta teta dongar nyoya ke lote ta non do sanda wote kani chonga de sena jo mare bala tene da tun semba tene chonga re tende danze te paun che bala tan khoala lo do ne danze pangure mato cheke khoala ga yendo la danze de pan top gona tene te se kale khabo yore yo ne tela tene tene kona te ta sungu yore te ga ra re.
But you're correct. When it's said that disgust for samsara, it means disgust for the mental afflictions, our own kleshas, our own mental afflictions. But to deal with the implications of your question, when it's said, when the inseparability of samsara and nirvana is referred to, it's used to describe a realization that individuals have on quite a high level of the path of the nature of all things. And that nature is the nature both of samsara and of nirvana. So they are inseparable in nature. The nature of samsara, the nature of nirvana is the same. The reason why that needs to be mentioned is that our biggest problem is dualism. Because of our dualism, we see nirvana as a goal, and we see samsara as something we want to escape. And in the context of our experience, how we experience the world, we're not entirely wrong. Nirvana is what we want to achieve, and samsara is what we want to escape. The problem is that the very dualism that causes us to see nirvana as a goal and samsara as something we want to escape, that very dualism is the cause of our suffering and the cause of samsara. Dualism comes from ignorance, which in this context means principally the belief in a self, instinctive, innate belief in the self. And the only way we can eradicate that belief, which is mistaken, which is false, the only way we can eradicate it is through disgust with samsara. So even though really samsara is not something to be escaped and nirvana is not something to be attained, we still need to be disgusted with samsara in order to realize that samsara is not something to be escaped and nirvana is not something to be attained.
Thank you, Rinpoche. It is beautiful to see you again. Can you provide some advice for those of us who have outlived our guru by 20 and 30 years and have a bit hazy memories at this point about everything?
Tata ngazo de lo chenpo yin de ngazo mongcho ge zawe lama de zo de lo nishu sumju ngan la nyangan la de zawaris. Da lama la sowa debju sewe kapsa de ne lama ge lama de drengi do yin walzam ma to sacha shira do se. Pache ge yana de tata de ngazo tsama ge chichap ge lachen de gong kugo ma yana de Rinpoche dan payu chekpa ge lama shao de yin sage.
Chitan ge dawo chile cha na tene yawa tamje la shikta yuk ge tsama singe trawa de one ke jebo tamba seden chi yimba yana ta shikta yuk ge tsama mamik jang chunda yendo kamik janna wa sen son wa de ta ngaran so nyin zinge logi joyor do chobe ke kanda sosi jebo la tene o shik sambe gen do shik tang o tanda ngaran ge lama te yo sambe gen do shik te nyin de res one ge nyin de re dio res mato che ke thon tambe ke ngo la shik da yobe ke sema ta tawa chuna ge dawa ta do la kala so ge ming na den na wa sen so yo wa de chuna ge da zo te Gyamtso chenpo na la sha wa yin Gyamtso chenpo te kankhen da wa chen song de papa chung je ge na la sha wa yin ya te na la ta shom den ken da wa chen song de o te ta do la te ni so ge lo ge joyor che ge na la sa shin ta pan da wa chi so la te pa mu gu se den chi yo ba yin na sha to pan da bu kone nambe ge tu ge manam ge nu pa ti la te ni yong ge yo de te sam de ma ze ba che ge ta khora nyam ni la ma ra sim ye me se ne se yo de te yendu kapsula social sab lama te one tan ta to ne lo nda wo te la te ne lam mi to ge chinap te rang ko song to ge chinap te rang lunga yi sam na sho yo me kapsula lam to tang ra sen ye me pan da wo ndo go yo de te yendu kapsula lama sen ne tan de dorji ge tan da wo sa wa temba so me pan da wo ji Yastela Ganaso Samo Tangi Yomade, Lama Singente, Tombe Rangi, Chuji Cook Rangi, Joa Mep Rangi, Tap Rangi, Tat Koranti, Samo Tangi Yode, Te, Tat Tombe Rangi, Tetan, Rang Sem Tombatella, Kona Yawatan Mevades. Te Yendu Kapsela Sosu Ge Sem Nelo Te, Chuji Tapena, Lametoda Nancy, Emily of Capsula. Tene lama rase yeme re mato cheke ta tele los chube ki che yulu shata ki lu che yona lama yo devanda wata men lama me devanda wate pache chi yang tape ne lo la me vanda wate de yo de pache tenda wi san
Buddhas don't actually stay and go. when we think that they're here, they're not really here. And when we think that they've gone, they haven't really gone anywhere. Therefore, it's said that, in the invitation to the Guru in Guru Yoga practice, it said, you are beyond staying and going, and appear wherever thought of, like the reflection of the moon in water. When you consider the reflection of the moon in water, if there's water there, it will reflect the moon. And it doesn't matter whether the water is the Atlantic Ocean, or a lake, or a small teacup. It's equally capable of reflecting the moon. And when the water's there, it seems like the moon is there. And if the water's poured out, it seems like the moon has gone anywhere. But the moon hasn't gone anywhere. It wasn't here, and therefore it's not gone away. Nevertheless, we do experience things as though when the water's poured out of the cup, the moon is gone. But that is because of our own dualism. In reality, whether we can see it or not, the Guru is always present wherever someone has a devotion for him. Whether you're aware of it or not, when you recollect the Guru with devotion, he's actually there. If your devotion is authentic, he's really there. He's as much there as he was when he was physically alive and you saw him face to face. But this says something about the Guru. The Guru is not the water. The Guru is the moon, the reflection. In the same way, we tend to solidify the Guru. We think of the Guru as solid because we remember or we think of the Guru's flesh and blood appearance. But the Guru is really the display of emptiness. He's the particular display of emptiness that points out emptiness. And so when you understand what the Guru really is, then you will begin to understand the inseparability of your mind and the mind of your Guru. When push comes to shove, your mind is just emptiness. It's an emptiness that knows. And that is what the Guru's mind is also. When through devotion you receive the blessings of your Guru's body, speech, and mind, then you gain that realization, that experience of what the Guru really is. That the Guru is really the display of emptiness as wisdom. Therefore, that true Guru cannot be separate from your mind, because one emptiness and another emptiness cannot be separated from one another, and no distinctions can be made between them.
Thank you, Rinpoche. My question is, there's a lot of discussion about seeing the nature of mind. Is there a way that you can tell us what to expect from this experience?
A lot of gas. It tends to cause people to get a lot of gas. No, I'm joking. Same way. Semji nelo tona. Semji nelo tona. Kandai gares. Ini mo sena. Semji nelo tona. Kandai gares. Ninge chutu shogere la.
How about those?
Says he likes my answer. He says that's that.
Ta
So then we should do this alone sometime. Then.
You know. So send my taweka su chikpo tanagajiri. Mission not maybe cause tanagajiri.
Make it like that.
No, you should do it right in a big crowd. So, also then they saw the Chinsi Chichi Lodre. The next shoot, they can choling that the beer choling that doa, they get apare. That the or the urgent to console get apare.
Yeah.
It that the red yaki. Meme that the urgent of juggy apare. They get the con chungdune con the Chinserum Chinishin, that's all joy. Then pa truku number given then choling they goes none Juma Gazarius had it. Controlling a Jesus, then it come plop. She doesn't. What was on there? What did Lodge the choling rank is on it? There's a case of that actually that when the previous Netin Chokje Lingpa incarnation, the father of Virgin Tobjala and those. So he's been reincarnated now. He's, I guess, in his 30s. Anyway, was young. He was attended an assembly led by the previous Tsongsa Chense Rinpoche, Chenchi Chuchi Ludru. And while at the assembly, he had some gas. And Chense Chuchi Ludru knew it was an opportunity to point out his mind to him because, of course, Rinpoche was a very high Tulku, but not the presiding Tulku was Chense Rinpoche. And so Chense Rinpoche, they had a break in the sessions, got down off his throne and was walking by the ranks of the Tulkus, and knowing that the Choling Rinpoche had gas, he punched him in the stomach, causing him to fart really, really loudly. And of course, for Tibetans, farting in the shrine room is a no-no and very embarrassing, especially if you're a high-ranking Tulku. And this was not a subtle fart, king of farts. And at that moment, Choling Rinpoche later wrote that he recognized the nature of his mind through the embarrassment.
Tapena da kaingo telo pak naro pala ngote bekapsala tene hamgo ge deja hyun ngote dewa tate dawo mangboji yori tap chepat papa mangboji pena ta hyang sapake tanda dala tishere ngote bekapsala tene tishere ba hyang sapala teba de bugu cheba de papa chene tene ta cheke ngala chaja chembo ngote ro shudu kapsala o degede ta tanda nge ma jage yore sarang getamu ma te job tene nge ngote chosang ta khon pha phe so te khon lo job je phosa rin do tene khona dojo japsala dojo mejo japsala mejo dingsa ding ma sa song de kapsala khon chaja chembo ngo so song ade tenda boge chenap se da dembe jebo tamba tondo la ina ngone thane ge ngote tan la che kero sekenda bo yinge mando number na so bo thone ngote ne te no ge tende yode ta te mago te pena tanda tenda bo che la ina jebo tamba gare la ina lama shan ma yo pa ina ya Yeshe ko je song song ma bo yode se ba ta che de te ke tap te la lama shin na yo nan da ma yo nan da zo no ya shida yo ma le
de na jenge nyame gompo paga Yame Gompopa, Jal Dukan, it's okay. Lamla Drodoyan, Majal Gonayan, Motor, Momodo.
对那当把他们他妈忘出来呢，我呢他那个，可能说了个拿着白的，也给一些个也是中国。
Param Tama Wang. Oh,
我那他那都，
Naro inside.
拿着给一些个也是中，中把中的嘛是拿着看看嘛，可能能听得能的。
Then Mapa Sarahagi, she could be just as
真的有，真的有，但那个那是什么？你嘛给他参见着了。
Jigmailing.
你们那边那样说给。
Kunzang Palchen Ling.
真的，我要是的。现在有我的，下边现在要么是。
As funny as that story is, it really brings to the fore the point that there is no one way for a teacher for a holy being to actually point out the nature of the mind of a disciple. And so one thing that can be said about this is the tremendous resourcefulness involved in the teachers doing this. In the case of this previous Nathan Choling Rinpoche, he was put in a situation of unbearable embarrassment through farting loud, because nobody else saw the punch. You know, it was done under the Zen and so on. So it just looked like he just let one rip. And the embarrassment just short-circuited his defenses and he gained recognition. Similarly, Tilopa transmitted the mind nature to Naropa by slapping him on the face with his sandal. Another story that some of you may know if you've read the Garland of Getaka, is that what it's called? I can never remember. The new Baram history, is that one of the great disciples of Lord Gampopa and his nephew, Dakpo Gyamtso, was Lama Shang Tselpa. And Lama Shang, not to be confused with the Shang Pokaji, that's separate, but the Lama Shang was eccentric as a master. And he had a tremendous ability to point out the nature of mind and could demonstrate 8 miraculous forms and so on. But he was also very eccentric. And one point, there goes the Milarepa de Paramtama Wangchu Jalsawa, Dumbo Chungdune Jalsare, Dene Shang Zalpa Jal, Dene Yansur Patne. Yeah, at this point, Milarepa, who became the lineage holder of Paramtama Wangchuk and had met him, but went to Lama Shang Zalpa for the pointing out instruction because he was so known for it. And when he arrived at Lama Shang Zalpa's residence, he discovered that Lama Shang was in the midst of preparing for a war. Specifically, he was going to be laying siege to some castle or encampment or something. And so he went to Lama Shang and he said, please, precious Guru, I request of you the pointing out instruction of Mahamudra. And so Lama Shang looked at this young 18-year-old man, he was fairly strong too, and said, oh yeah, okay, help me win this war, and when it's over, I'll point out Mahamudra. That's the easy part. Let's just get this war done. So he spent the duration of the conflict helping to build and launch siege engines, catapults, and whatever the other. There's another, I forget, Game of Thrones watchers could tell you that's the thing that it's another thing like a catapult. Yeah, that's it, trebuchet, thank you. Yeah, thank you. And things like that. And eventually the Lama Shang won the war, and at the moment the war ended, immediately Milarepa realized Mahamudra completely through the blessing of his guru. He didn't actually, Lama Shang didn't actually have to teach him. He just had to wage war on his behalf. So there's no one method. And sometimes even physically meeting the teacher is not necessary. there have been countless cases of teachers giving the pointing out instruction to receptive, devoted disciples long after their passing, sometimes centuries afterward. And there have also been cases of where people were on their way to meet a teacher and gained the Mahamudra recognition before meeting them. It would often happen with people who were on their way to meet Lord Gampopa to receive his Mahamudra teachings, that simply through their intention to meet Gampopa and setting upon the journey on the way, they would gain Mahamudra realization. And then they would meet him and he'd say, yep. And his job was done. Among Lord Gampopa's disciples, Param Tama Wangchuk, who became Tishirepa's principal guru, received the pointing out principally from the wisdom body of the Mahapandit Naropa, who had actually passed away centuries previously. Similarly, Lord Marpa received the pointing out from the wisdom body of the Mahasiddha Saraha, and in the Nyingma tradition, the omniscient Jigme Lingpa received the ultimate pointing out instructions from the wisdom body of the omniscient Longchenpa. So there's no one way, and therefore no one way it's going to feel.
Thank you.
But they all had gas. No, I'm joking.
Over there.
Quite a few questions here. I'll start. Sorry, I'm trying to get to it. Okay, so this is from Linda Lee. So often when I try to look directly at my thoughts, the first thing I become aware of is resistance to it. To look directly, I become more aware of my attachments to these thoughts. What would be an effective remedy to recall when this happens?
Linda Lee ge Jason. Namto ke ngola tadu namto korong la shencha yopa ke zonang jumpo labidos. Ye nyampo kan right.
That taking him with that thing is on the body.
Yeah.
Sunday cassette, then they take paint off.
It's at such times that prayer is needed, and the more prayer, the better.
Okay, so should I do the next question?
Yes.
Or? Okay, so, and you can, this is any good prayers for mantras? Oh, sorry, thank you. Any good prayers for mantras for warding off disease carrying mosquitoes? This is from Florida.
What did you say? Oh, prayers or mantras for warding off those mosquitoes that carry Zika?
Yeah.
Okay. Data the Natsa Sapa de Data Florida ne Miami ke chot ne kala darga to along but the Zika se wa the Florida America la. De Mayawa ke nga kam so that mixa kariga.
Ha? Ne, tende namanda meo, ka tende yores. Ka tende yores the tate, ya, hag orte hida. Nga ke tanda kom no, namangare la naya yore.
Oh,
namanda.
More.
Tena ta chamba hinje gam. Tene semjena no se hida mayo honam taba ina tende pengare.
The
So na what the ta look nasade. Tene tende kora nasang hoya kap dawo. Tende jaya yo na ta.
da yomare. Data yomare. Yomare. Mepa de ke de ki nyotra yo. Dona rangdang jenla mayona de pengera.
Manam dawa.
Well, there are lots of specialized mantras that exist to avert or cure particular sorts of disease. But I don't know much, Rinpoche said, about all those kinds of peculiar mantras. There are lamas who know lots of them and then they give them out, but I'm not one of those. Basically, what you need, the best protection is love and compassion. So if you make the aspiration, may no one have to suffer from this illness, then that will be the best protection.
next one or somebody?
Well, we had several from here, so you go ahead.
Okay, so the next one, and of course each is different. If we're told on page, and this is on page 92, to always pray to our guru, then how do we work in other practices such as nundros, sadhanas, and even meditation? I don't know how to balance these things.
The number check the takbar lama chipula sovatapko. Yanande nyam de ngatsola nyamlen pen nyamlen ge rambala pen ngondro dang la gomju dang ngak daju dang de gom jabjula sopa ge nyamlen ge rambo mambo yo.
Tate tap devo yore.
Las.
Panda sanga dorje tekpe ke lam chela. Tamang kawa me banga ke lam chen song yore. Ta te la so se ke pena samlo tangyo teke kange re. Pena kare re sena. Dorje ke sanda woche la samlo tang ne. Teni dela so tap den dela namato tang mare banda won. Dela so tap den dela na so tang mare banda won tang do kapsula. Teni pe kala kapoti yore. Yana zi na so tap na chana do ji lun do da wo. Chana do ji la so tap jesen drama lun do da wo. Jesen drama la so tap na jambe ya lun do da wo. Ta ti kange pe chuk jambo yore. Te ta wo mai ba je ke to ne. 소수 기 좋아 가리 동거 연나야 뺐나 혼도 야베 감다 보이나 야면나 다 착진 기 혼도다 보이나 마체 호텔라 소호텔라 소수 기 람마도 예메베 도전 상요리 어다 거나 님이 최대 그 거게 혼도다 보이나 소수다 람마도 예메베 그 모르는 뭐지다고 다 진내 요리 tenahingata choga rede la to sa rede yodes ta teta wa sa khare yona ya ta tetang tini so sa lama ta jobe ke lama tini tu song sanja ta chanyo simba tam yeme ba yin samsung na tini khaya sa ke phondo wa da bo yo ma de khanga ti te na ndu de ba da bo tap de bon da bo yo de.
That is easy. It's said that the Vajrayana path, is it going? Oh, okay. That the Vajrayana path presents many means and little difficulty. And one of the reasons for this is that the various practices are not exclusive to one another. We run into problems when we introduce an idea of deity exclusivity into our practice, which is a form of solidification. When we think of the deity as a specific, solidified external being, then when we meditate on that deity or pray to that deity, we are concerned with that deity alone. And a lot of people fall into this type of thinking. They think, well, if I meditate upon Chenrezig, then I'm neglecting Vajrapani. And if I meditate on Vajrapani, I'm ignoring Manjushri. And if I meditate on Manjushri, what about Tara? But it doesn't actually work that way. Any one of these deities embodies all of them. For example, if someone is doing Ngondro or preliminary practice, for example, if they're doing the Mahamudra preliminaries, in most forms of the Mahamudra preliminaries, the central figure is your root guru in the form of the Buddha Vajradhara. In the Nyingma preliminaries, in most forms, the central figure is your root guru in the form of Guru Rinpoche. In any case, whatever deity you are meditating on is always taught to be inseparable from your root guru and the embodiment of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So any practice you do can always be praying to the Guru.
Okay, and I have one more. Sorry, I went to sleep. All right, so this is, I think, the last one I've got. As I get older and not better, I found my mind gets tired easily and a lot of stupor at times. If we were trying to carry out the instructions mentioned this morning, does it mean we should not do anything special when met with the stupor state?
Ah. Lo gerem shindo sem ge jingmuk de che rogido se. Da dereng ge songban ge menga ta de yana de jingwa dang gopa la mixa de salyak ge kesha kaimandos. Den de gomja pe kapso sem te jingmuk tipna de salyak ge menga de gogido e kanare do.
다 대파도 뭔가 채파도 파파지 여봐이나 라효 그살도 그래.
Lasa. Let it.
다 오늘 게 슬라바 람도 효베게 거니 그러나 간세라고 다 람도 효유 링본다고 임바이나야 냠뇨게 셀라 페 마서 판다고 이나 서브게 탑라스나 채파도 파파리 근데 람나 가산도
Lo.
사고 셰임도 가르쳐대와
That's really an individual matter. If someone's faith and devotion are sufficiently strong, the strength of their devotion alone will dispel torpor. If, on the other hand, if they're a new practitioner or a long-time practitioner who has not developed much experience, then they may need to apply separate instructions or means for dispelling torpor or excitement as appropriate.
얘는 선대담 판람 야포스나 된디 팽이요리
But in either case, wholehearted prayer will help.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Song on 92 says, always pray to your guru. So since the
What?
instruction...
I'm sorry, I can't understand what you're saying. Can you start again?
Yes, I can. The song on page 92 says,
okay.
always pray to your guru.
Yeah.
Since your instruction on the Guru Yoga a few weeks ago, I've been frequently doing the mantra in that. It seems to be in Sanskrit. Is there Tibetan translation that we could or should do? And could you define all the words of that mantra?
You mean...
Om Ahom Guru Shri
Yeah, I know,
Haruka.
but you mean you want it translated into Tibetan or into English?
Into Tibetan.
Well, yeah, that was given. That's in the Guru Sadhana itself. Remember, after reciting the mantra, then we recited a prayer several times, a short one.
It's in there that, okay.
Yeah, it was added. It's basically just the translation, but you know the meaning of the words in the mantra, right?
Not all of them.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
파탄은 가위
Paltratung gawe Yeshe there. Paltratung gawe Yeshe. There, though. There. Ngak de ka. On the ka. Oma home sende de Lama dang Sanji Tamche Kosong Tuk Yang Kosong. Then Guru Shri Herika Paltratung. Maasuka Jana Devachimbu Yeshe. Jwala Vajra the Barway Dorje. Siddhi Siddhi. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Om Ahom represent the body, speech, and mind of the Guru and of all Buddhas. Guru means Guru. Shri means glorious. Heruka means blood drinker. Mahasuka Jana, it means wisdom of great bliss. That's part of his name. So from Shri Heruka Mahasuka Jana Rwala Vajra, that's all his name. Pal Trokdung, glorious blood drinker. Dewa Chimpu Yeshe, wisdom of great bliss, blazing. Jwala means blazing. Vajra means Vajra. Siddhi means Siddhi. And Hum means mind. And Swaha means may it be so, or make it so. Jnana is wisdom.
Wisdom, and jvala is blazing.
Jwala, yeah.
Jwala.
Like there's a I think a children's book author, Ruth Prober Jwala. Yeah, Jwala. It's written Jvala, but it's pronounced Jwala. Tibetans pronounce it Zola, which is easier. Jwala. Yeah. Jwala Vajra is Barway Dorje.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
You were talking in the morning session about being gentle and soft like cotton, and you said the first is the sign of studying and contemplating is to be unopinionated or subdued or tranquil. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, the quotation that Rinpoche gave was to be tranquil and subdued. Yeah.
Subdued. So specifically, I want to ask about the word subdued in this context around others. Yeah. So that's one.
That the tata shishing doma gomta yomo mepa song te kapso shishing dulwa kanga sekyore.
Xexing turwa senna ta cheki cholam na song yo re. Ta che kero ge mare ta chana nika cholam na song yo re. Chelo la ta wo je na ya. Lu ge cholam da wo je na ya. Teni che khora chongjo la so ba ta bu mai ba. Xexing turwa ge ko ne phe ban da wo ta. Nga ge cholam na ya na ya be tho shi ma shi da wo mai ba je ge tho ni. Ya nga xeba a turwa ge ko ne phe ba ta ta don do la ta lunga yi song ge cholam khare na wa yin na ya thon na menchen ba me pa te be me pa nam la ngambar ga wa sen de song ge wa de te yin du ka sa la ta xewa turwa pa yi ba ta dem ba thon na menchen ba me pa ta te da wo je la te ne ko na se ge wa de.
A peaceful and subdued refer to both the external behavior and the internal state. But these are basically recognized through the person's demeanor, external behavior. So basically, it's how the person behaves with their body and speech that you can observe. But physically, it means that they don't behave mindlessly, like they don't run and jump for no reason. And verbally, that they don't behave mindlessly, they don't babble on for no reason. And they don't babble. I don't mean Babylon, I mean babble on, yeah, as opposed to Babylon. And it's defined traditionally as the person's demeanor is never disagreeable. They're always harmonious, everything they do is done carefully and attentively and with thought beforehand.
And also,
They're never thoughtless.
They can fit in anywhere or with anyone.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hello. I have a question about the song on page 91, the empty and clear, its nature awareness. And the first line about our mind being empty and clear and its nature awareness. And then in the second line it says, give up the intellectualization. And he talked about the three steps being very important, the study and then the examination and sort of the debate with ourselves about it being true, and then the meditation practice. So do we need to give up the first two when we start the third?
I need to see what the Tibetan is.
La
Yeah, but the Bhai Tana Gajere.
kandere la. Just
the
단지 당보들에
Seldom, Tongdang, Rikpe Nyingpo Chen,
엘라도
Tongdang, Seldom, Rikpe Nyingpo. Dinyi Chongle, Loi Nyanyul, Pong Sombade, Loi Nyanyul Pong Senate, Dumbo Tusam Gomsum Genane, Topatan Sambe Kapso, Loi Nyanyul Gogido. De Kapso Pena, Gom Jape Dutsala Lepna, Loi Nyanyul Pong Senate, Tusam Ge, Samlo Tong, De Sama Pong Gogido, a Condor
토삼게 갑 삼로서 빵 송려 말이스 다 로이 냥요 빵 송와데 답변은 믹세게 터바서 그 값을라 되니 변나다 딱게 망보다 효르바스 다 대답 딱게 그 남자 빵 송한다고 그러는 거야.
It doesn't mean that you need to forget what you learned through the first two stages. It means that the both hearing and analysis, but especially the second stage of analysis, involve logical thinking. And you don't attempt to employ logical thinking in meditation. Inside it.
Any help? So.
Always.
Going once. There's one at the back.
I haven't been enjoying reading one of the earlier ones, The Wandering. Song The Wandering, describing roads he's never seen. I read it out loud. It's very playful and fun and instructional. Is this something I could do in public, like at an open mic?
Open mic where?
In public, not at, you know.
You mean like not here, but you mean like
Yeah.
really public?
Yeah. Can we read these in public?
Maybe, can you read these? Yeah. Let's see which one.
That was on page 7.
Oh, it's really early. Oh, that one. Ngoma ne somba ke sungu pe rangbo yore de kore ke de patse kutse mangja wa ke nyamnyong sondo wa so de o dene wang shi ke ramba da wang shi ke menga da dene de ogo da tango mombo yore dona de mimang ke chola de dona de ke pes jusas mimang ke chosana chozo mayamba Nangba ki kola mayimba pena de duga trapsam konsuki romo tongsa shit tongsa dela.
다 동다 라마요나 되게
Ore. In de nana mombulo, de nana ogo tengo mombo yore. Tanya
데 다데 가면고
gamiongo.
단 데데 테스는 되게도 다데데 자가서는 가게
No.
다 마도 제기야 데 담다 라우카치메 파로포테 데로 제와이나
Hello.
테니 데 히다 펜도 쳔보용만이
Well, the problem is that you know, if you read the song, describes a lot of tantric techniques, and if people hearing it develop antipathy toward it, you know, they think that it's fishy stuff. That's not good for them. So perhaps not.
다 텔로파게 나로팔라가 테니 카와체 주반다와이나 야네다 카가레 페나 제슨 텔로파게 니마체라 나로파 코나 마니요 데도다 자보 쳔보체게 창사 잡 나마 팀도
Ore.
테니 파서데니야 당알 슬마 세덴시나
Ore.
테니 mende Tone, team with his own.
What is it?
Then in Naropa Pata to the Yenda Somanoa. Nine inside the common like Joson. Then they call up Nama's own team that's on the road. That was very much. And I Lama took him Honam Con and they did a charge and up down the target. That then that was mine, not into the sort of Sanga Tamdas and the Galaka.
Rinpoche's first answer was that the danger is you might get beaten up, and then he added the other things. He said because your situation is not the same as that of Naropa. When Tilopa saw a bride being led to a royal wedding, then he said he didn't exactly say it to Naropa. He just made the remark, and the only person there was Naropa. He said, "Well, if I had a disciple, he'd grab that bride, take her off of the procession, and bring her to me." And so he went off and tried to grab the bride and drag her to Tilopa, and then. But in that, he said that if that were the situation, then it would be okay. But otherwise, you'd basically be placing yourself at some risk and putting the people who might develop antipathy toward this stuff. And then Rinpoche said also there is a rule about what's called the preaching a secret mantra in public. Says, but don't go out and read these songs in public venues and then expect me to heal you if you come back all beaten up.
Okay. Maybe I'll audition for you and I can do it at the next Losar or something, my presentation.
So in the Dharma Center, it's fine. Says, but otherwise, if you got beaten up, in a cafe somewhere through singing these songs, said, Tilopa could just stroke Naropa and he'd be all better. He said, but I could stroke you for hours and you'd not get any better. So
maybe I'm due for a good whooping. I don't know.
Any other questions? Thank you for your questions. They were all very good. We'll conclude with the dedication.
Garajar